Morning, guys. Morning, guys. Morning, guys. Morning, guys.
Is that Scott?
Hey, it's Scott. Yeah.
Good morning. So we didn't really mean that joke about bosses don't get up early.
It's all good, man. Just want
He
to
was
make
still
sure that
sleeping. He didn't hear it.
I just want to make sure that we're all good. You guys are going to introduce this video, and then are you going to come back after the video as well?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I have everything loaded up and ready to go.
All right. Attendee list is growing. We'll just wait 1 minute, then we'll jump in.
Yes, sir.
All good here, Scott.
Awesome. Hey, good to hear your voice, man.
Yeah, you both came back. Thanks after yesterday. A rigorous day. All right, folks, we'll begin. We're delighted to have the third of the three keynotes of the four. So just a quick reminder, Adriana Velasquez from WHO shared about our partnership, her partnership with and WHO's partnership with the global CE community yesterday morning, and laid out some of the priorities and the aggressive schedule moving forward that WHO has, and that we're here to support that. Yesterday evening, we had a brief report from the birthday guy, Dr. Jim Weir, whose birthday was, and he had pre-recorded about the credentialing challenge that we're trying to meet around the world and make it country centric and not, but with global input. And then we had some dialogue about that before we ended for the evening yesterday. And so this morning, we start with Dr. Jaitender Sharma, who is CEO of the Andhra Pradesh MedTech Zone in southern India. And he used to be leader of the Ministry of Health India for everything medical device, but then he in 2018 started AMTZ in one of the key provinces of India, but which has become a nationalized entity, and you'll learn more about it, about AMTZ. But what he's doing is laying out the grand challenges that as a result of COVID for our profession, and he is uniquely qualified to lay out those grand challenges, and we'll hear those in a moment. And then Dr. David and I'll come back and do a dialogue with you about what we heard. Now, I'll remind you in 2019, the grand challenge was around telehealth. Our colleague, Dr. Elliot Sloan, shared that even though telehealth solutions are available, they're not always implemented in countries around the world and in our own country. And that was such an incredible grand challenge for October 2019, given what happened just a few months later that we all know about. So with all that intro, roll the tape and let's see what Dr. Sharma has to share.
Good morning and namaste from India. Welcome to this wonderful virtual summit. Indeed, the COVID has created challenges for multiple sectors of society, starting with healthcare, hospitality, travel, and so on. And each one of those challenges has been converted into an opportunity by the society at large. For example, we now are able to meet and hold large events like this virtually, which was not thinkable or practical 2 years ago. In the healthcare paradigm, large number of challenges did come, starting with vaccine delivery, masks, oxygen concentrators, ventilators, diagnostics, particularly the RT-PCR kits, and various parts of the world, various groups in the world, various champions in the world responded to this challenge in unique and different ways. Each one of these ways has lessons for the rest to follow. And in fact, all these strategies put together make a huge case, make a bundle of strategies that are innovative in themselves and transformative in its impact. I represent AMTZ, which is world's first integrated medical devices manufacturing and research ecosystem. Supported by the government, this ecosystem as a public sector enterprise thrives and works with innovators, R&D groups, manufacturers to not only support them in their innovation journey, but also work with hospitals in providing affordable, large-scale supplies of medical devices. Let me take you through a few slides which showcases what we are and what we do. AMTZ saves lives and serves the nation by rapidly scaling up the manufacturing capability of the manufacturers and innovators. Bundled in one single campus, large number of centers for safety assessment, validation, 3D printing, biomaterial testing, gamma irradiation, molding, lasers, MRI coils are some of the many centers we have put together makes a huge powerhouse which allows manufacturers, innovators, R&D specialists to quickly convert their idea into prototype into batch production into scale-up supplies. In a single day, AMTZ produces 100 ventilators, 500 oxygen concentrators, 100,000 N95 masks, and 1 million RT-PCR COVID kits. Besides, we also produce a large number of other medical devices such as superconducting magnets, robotic surgery systems, operation theater lights, and so on. We also democratize technology by making it accessible and mobile. For example, we partnered with Uber Cabs, supplied over 200 oxygen concentrators in 80 cities of India. Oxygen concentrators which cost $100,000 as a commodity can now be booked via an app which is available on Android on iOS called O2 Home just for $5 a day or less on rent. It's the Uber cab which comes to our warehouse in these cities, picks up the oxygen concentrator, takes it to the home of the patient and collects it back after 5 or 10 days of subscription, invariably reducing the cost of oxygen concentrator from $1,000 nearly to $5 a day. Similarly, we produce mobile RT-PCR testing vans. We also make oxygen generator PSA plants on trucks, which means a hospital in peak demand, instead of blocking capital costs on setting up of a PSA plant, can actually call for a vehicle that can produce oxygen for a few days and migrate to any other hospital. Similarly, we produce safe zones, which are container hospitals, low-cost container hospitals that have ICU set up inside but can be transported on trucks to any destination with a large distribution footprint across the country and even a larger footprint across the world. AMTZ also is now a BRICS, Center of Excellence for Medical Devices, allowing multiple countries to synergize, complement, converge, and take advantage of a system like AMTZ. With multiple partners and our reach across the world, we also see that medical technology needs to be democratized faster, which means its production, research, and access to communities and countries across the world needs to be taken at a rate which is far more exponential than what we see today. Now, there are two things that can be identified as our footprint strategy, and that can help us incrementally move faster. First strategy is, if you take a medical technology, most of the medical devices have sensors, printed circuit boards, valves, design R&D. Now, these are systems that are largely in control of few suppliers. And therefore, even if someone wants to produce or R&D a ventilator in Botswana or Bulgaria or India or Bangladesh or Brazil for that matter, they have to depend on valve sensors and other critical components that come from very few destinations globally. So the idea is, what if these sensors, valves, designs of printed circuit boards, and all the critical components can be bundled together as a hub, as a bank, and we can have a sensor bank or a sensor hub which can have the design and the supply capability along with the information that needs to be known by the users, by the innovators, putting together all the available designs of sensors, printed circuit boards, valves, and so on in an open source format. Then not only the designing would be faster, but supplies would be even faster, and the localization in terms of domestic production of these critical components would complement our net ability to produce life-saving technologies. The second baseline strategy that could be very handy to the global clinical engineering community is in the large technologies like the CT scans, the MRIs, the cath labs, the C-arms, the linear accelerators. There are certain platforms which are again not within the access of most clinical engineering groups globally. These include flat panel detectors, scintillators, data acquisition systems, CT scan tubes, say up to 2 million heat units, 1.5 Tesla MRI superconducting magnet, and the helium liquefaction that it needs. Now, these are platform technologies that either inhibits or allows us to move forward in scale up, in making things affordable. And therefore, the strategy which is suggested is if the groups of industry and academic colleagues under the broad umbrella of Clinical Engineering Division, the GCA, the global champions from across the world could come together and make consortiums. These consortiums could take on the mantle to R&D, large-scale platform technologies that can allow production of medical devices at a much faster rate in a more democratized manner, which would allow us to produce life-saving medical devices, which are highly complex, in a much more sustainable way, and allow it to be shipped and supplied to the rest of the world in a more affordable manner. And therefore, this wonderful networking and the conference today is historic, because if we were to, for example, create an open source hub for sensors, valves, printed circuit boards that are used, and on the other hand, create consortium of institutions that can take on, with sufficient support from all of us, creation of platform technologies, our net ability to produce medical devices that are more accessible and affordable to the scientific and to the patient community would be more a possibility. With these words, I thank the organizers for having me here and having us share our thoughts with all of you, and we look forward to working together to make world a better place. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Jaitender. He planned to be with us today. He had a medical emergency in the family, and I don't believe is able to be online, but shout out if you are, Jaitender. I don't see you there right now. So he was given the ability to join us. So I tried to lay out, and Yadin, maybe you can pick up over there. I tried to lay out as he was going his grand challenges, and everybody heard there were two of them, and I'm gonna go over them quickly. I know you heard them, but he talked about at AMTZ how they have democratized technology, and you saw bringing all those different entities together, and then this incredible outpouring of capability. And part of what he means by democratizing was, yeah, $10,000 oxygen concentrator US prices, but you know, the average person in my country and in yours couldn't get an oxygen concentrator when they needed one, maybe for home use. But through Uber and through 80 warehouses across India, they not only ship these oxygen concentrators to the warehouse, but work with Uber so that the average family that perhaps could afford up to $5 US rental per day of an oxygen concentrator during, you know, these COVID crises could get one, where otherwise, you know, they couldn't get access one through health systems or even because it's way too costly. So not only producing the tools because of bringing people together, but also getting them out to the public is what he talked about. So he wanted to democratize technology by production, research, and access. And he talked about two strategies to do that: a bank of these critical technology components. You know, he talked about sensors, valves, printed circuit boards of of a certain nature. So can we do an open source hub and a bank of these critical technology components so that the designers could come together and put these tools together at way lower costs and way quicker than maybe we're doing today. And then he talked about these certain platform technologies, he talked about scintillators and maybe image systems and the like. Could these very difficult and high-tech technologies, could key stakeholders from the clinical engineering community, from industry, from others come together for much faster production, faster research of how to use these tools? So he talked about a coalition and an open source hub for parts. Yadin, some of your initial reaction?
I will continue with the line that you started of summarizing the message. The way that I was hearing what Jitendar was talking about is that we are facing problems. Part of our profession is ability to recognize that we are facing a problem and come up with the skills and the knowledge and the experience to address it and solve it. Dr. Sharma saw the problem, was able to identify it, had the experience by connection with other members of the industry, the manufacturing, the supply chains, the technician that he needed to put on the production line, the delivery, and the regulation or the regulatory compliance of a new product. He was able to see all the problems, put it together, and march it through the approval process of both regulation and perhaps even harder is the political environment that he's living in. But yet he did not give up. He pushed and built the coalition. And now we are listening to success stories. And that's what you and I started in 2015 when the first global clinical engineering summit came about with a list of challenges. And that is, we need success stories. We need you out there to take example of a case study like this and tell us the success stories around you that not many of us are aware of, and put it together and show the world this is what we bring to the table. We solve problems and we create coalitions. We create alliances, and all the credit to Dr. Sharma for being able today to give us this wonderful keynote and basically describing one of the success stories that we're all proud of.
Well, Yadin, Elliot Sloan has shared a great note here of, we need to do a better job of lauding and encouraging our young champions. And a small correction, and I totally agree with you, Elliot. Dr. Sharma is an interesting character, as we can tell, not only from what he's done already, but from his background. And he is not a physician. He's not a clinical engineer per se, but he was leading for the Ministry of Health, just to give you context for these comments today and the challenge. He was leading the medical device unit in the Ministry of Health there in India prior to starting AMTZ. Oh, by the way, I think he turned 39 this year. He's a triple doctorate in healthcare administration. That was his initial one. He has one in healthcare policy, and then, and a third one. And so all of these have enabled him to come into government, have the credibility, make changes fast in both the public and private health systems there. So, at the end of the day, we're not just trying to laud him, but he is doing something with all these credentials in our field, with our field. And so, these are the kind of partners we need, right?
I don't think that that would be my point. I'm not talking about credentialing.
Right.
I'm not talking about education. What I'm talking about is the ability to see that there is a problem in need of solution and bring a coalition, bring an alliance to solve it. That's what I'm talking about. Regardless if you are clinical engineer or not, what I'm asking you to do is write those case studies up, show how we are solving problems, and let's publish it and develop a book, the success story book in clinical engineering. And it's not limited to clinical engineers. Anybody that's able to see, observe a problem and identify the perimeters of the solution, more power to him or her. Let's do it. Let's print it. Let's publish it and carry it on to our village.
I agree. Do we, are there those that would like to make comments? We have a few minutes. We have some people in the room. Frank's coming up, but people, attendees will open your mic at the appropriate time.
I really like, I agree with what Elliot says, that Jitendar is a systems thinker and helping India move forward into the future. We have the same environment here in the United States where we're moving healthcare from a centralized model to a distributed model where we're doing healthcare in the home. And he's setting up systems in India to be able to effectively provide healthcare in the home. They're calling it democratizing healthcare, but it's, it's the same horse with a different name. It's very, very nice. I appreciate the approach too. It's, culturally appropriate for India. The United States has a slightly different approach because we're so commercialized and industrialized, but it's really interesting. Very, very good.
And I'll look for hands raised in the crowd. I'll give you a slice of Dr. Sharma's thinking, which is Yadin says it's about him, but it's about our whole profession and how we're going to respond to these kind of challenges. And as Frank just said, we're moving more towards digital health solutions in our country, and so are you in your country. And if you don't know that, go find out because it's happening. But for example, Prime Minister Modi in India a couple years ago, I think it was August of 2019, said, we will implement a digital health strategy for our country. And oh, by the way, we all know what, the second largest in the world and coming up fast. So a lot of folks there. So here's a slice of Dr. Sharma's thinking in response to his prime minister's challenge. And I want you folks online to think about it in response to your government's challenge, because once again, if they haven't adopted a digital health strategy, they will be soon, because that is the way the world is going. We'll never lose the acute care facilities at some level for the sickest of the sick, but for a lot of people, this is how healthcare will be, and technology will be democratized. So finally, Tom, what's Dr. Sharma's vision? Well, he's imagining, and this isn't hypothetical, this is actually true, that the 500 million part of their population, the poor part of that population in their country, by their definitions, he's imagining how they could receive healthcare. So imagine, if there was something like a phone, it doesn't have to be too smart a phone, but that everybody carried in the country, and that had GPS tracking, so you know who they are and where they are. Imagine that connected to an electronic health record. Imagine remote patient monitoring, particularly for those, the chronic diseases and the folks that needed that. Could be for everybody, but maybe for a subset. So imagine all that data flowing in, and then that data being informed by artificial intelligence, by all the data analysis of all these patients, and then proactively, working through something like 19,000 private hospitals there, and a lot of primary care providers helping address issues before they come up, when they do come up, and also after. So imagine all that stuff happening through digital medicine. And I said all that pretty quickly, but that's kind of the future of perhaps healthcare in that country and other countries. Yadin?
We're getting on the 9 o'clock track time. We need to get to the rooms and let people go.
Yep.
And what I want to say, it was a great example, as I call it, a case study, private, public sectors working together for the benefits of better patient care.
So I hope we blew your minds with that grand challenge, and more to come. And so once again, we're going to close this session. You'll be able to go back to the lobby and choose which ones of the sessions you're going to go to, and we'll start those here just in a few minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.